So Josh did a segment yesterday about Javier Milei, and he talked about the policies. We're going to look at some of the fun stuff and talk about some of the challenges that he's facing. First thing I want to say is that I love his energy. Just look at the first clip here, him with a flag.
I mean, he's a real eccentric. He's a
guy you'd love to have at a party, right?
I would find him annoying. I'm going to be honest.
You wouldn't just sit in a chair with your drink and enjoy?
No.
Just feel like...
I would definitely invite him. Now, let's go to the next clip because he has excellent dance moves. Look at it. If people don't want to dance at some point, he is guaranteed to raise spirits.
Is that dance moves?
He's like the BitConnect guy.
Yeah, look at this.
No, he does have a little bit of Trump about him there, where Trump used to boogie along to the YMCA. That was at least endearing.
Yes, basically. So he's spreading love around and enthusiasm and stuff. And I want to show you now, I think one of the funniest videos in politics I've ever seen. It's Milei. Can we have sound, please? Yeah.
But why? He's like Leatherface at the end of Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah, so basically, I want to thank Luis for lots of context. A friend of the show, he has given me lots of context about Argentina, but he told me that he is basically saying for the cast to tremble, that the cast is trembling or something. He's going to use the chainsaw to destroy all Argentinian corruption and the corrupt Argentinian institutions, and he is basically making everyone really happy and hip.
It looks like
with his chainsaw.
It looks like a POV shot from Dead Rising or something. Why, as a politician, would you want the liability of going into a packed South American crowd and waving a chainsaw about?
Because it's good fun.
If it is good fun, and also if things don't work, you're preparing your CV for a lumberjack position or something. You're showing you can handle the chainsaw.
He does have the facial features of an axe murderer in the 1970s.
I don't know if I can, but next time I go campaign, I want to bring a chainsaw on the doorstep.
On the doorstep?
Yeah, go door knocking.
Whose house are you going to turn up to?
Stand with us!
Hi, man. Want to buy a chainsaw?
Hi, folks. We've rolled out a new feature on the website, which is the ability to pay for an individual piece of content. So usually it's £5 a month every month to subscribe to all of the content on the website. But I appreciate there are going to be people who simply don't want to do that. They would be interested instead in purchasing a single piece of content for a lower amount, and they've got a particular niche that they're interested in watching. And so they don't want every single piece of content. They just want this one thing. So we've introduced this function where you can just simply purchase the one thing for £1.89, which I think is about $2.30 at the current exchange rates. And then that's just yours forever. So there's no sort of commitment there. There's no rolling subscription. It's just that one thing. So that's an option now that's on the website. It's completely live. It's completely available. And please go and enjoy it. And we'll see you all very soon.
Okay, so Chainsaw Man Milei is talking a bit about political correctness. He says basically stupid political correctness says that if you don't say we're woke, you're immediately presented as a violent danger to democracy. And he says basically, come on, guys, this is all, ridiculous. So let's talk a bit about, there's this article in Forbes. You can read it if you want. I'll just give you some context. It says here basically, so he won against Sergio Massa as the former Minister of Economics. He got around 56%, whereas Massa got 44%. Now, the first electoral round was October the 22nd, where he got 30% and Massa got 36.7%. But the reason he won to a large extent was that the third party leader, Bullrich, who got sort of 24%, told her supporters to vote for Milei. Now, the election has been represented and described as very ideological.
Well, he is a libertarian.
Yeah, and there is the issue of Peronism in Argentina, that is basically statist policies and constant economic mismanagement. And this person comes along and says basically that the Argentinians had enough with this. And he's going to use a chainsaw to cut spending. Okay, so his keywords are things like, freedom of free trade, limited government, respect of property rights. And basically, one thing to notice, which is important, is that close to 40% of Argentinians are under the poverty line, and 56% of young people are under the poverty line, according to this article. And let us just talk about the economic index of the index of economic freedom. Argentina scores, at what place does it score? Out of 176 countries. What is its position right now?
I mean, I've got it in front of me, so that's kind of cheating.
Okay, so don't talk about it.
100?
144th. So it's really low in economic freedom. It's also in the trade barrier index. Argentina ranks 80th out of 88 countries, and it ranks 95th in the International Property Rights Index. So,
well, my only sticking point with that, and yeah, it's run by insane socialists who have hamstrung needlessly economic prosperity. I just am wary of going forward only using economic metrics to register how healthy a country is, because it can't account for things like happy families and the like. So if he gets the economy into a better shape, and I'm happy to watch him do that from over there because we've not got any money invested in and the like, wish him well. You also need a more cohesive national narrative than just, I'm going to line your pockets with more money, particularly if he's going to do, as has been suggested in yesterday's segment, a open borders style policy, because he's going to abolish the welfare state and just sort of hope people don't turn up. Well, if people turn up for better economic conditions, it doesn't mean that they'll cast aside their old cultural prejudices if you don't give them a bigger cultural story. So things matter more than just economics.
We will see what is going to happen, because obviously he has a very difficult task ahead, and these measures take time to yield good results. So we'll see what is going to happen. I don't know exactly about the open borders issue, but I think that Argentina doesn't face the exact same issues that countries in Europe and also the US is facing with immigration. So whether that turns out to be a problem in the future, I don't know. But the point is to look at the context of what is happening right now. And when you're talking about the national sentiment, it seems to me that he is someone who does have a national sentiment. And there are people with Argentinian flags in his rallies and in his party. Anyway, let us talk a bit about a funny aspect of the campaign that I was hoping you were going to illuminate me a bit. John did. Let's say there was a sort of, if you can translate the post here, it says that there was a very organic campaign that mixed Goku with Milei.
This reminds me of when they kept making anime of Giorgia Meloni.
Okay.
I don't know what is with the online libertarian right and being obsessed with anime. And I've just made the YouTube comments a total cesspit now, haven't I?
So let's talk a bit about Dragon Ball Z. I don't know much about it, but it seems like there was a campaign to present Milei as
Goku, yeah.
Goku. Here's one thing from here.
It might just be the hair.
Now, I don't see because there's this camera in front of me, but I was told that this is a powerful move
this is
Goku is doing. And
Super
The
Saiyan.
number of views, though. 4.3 million on this.
yes, this is by his account also. He is basically performing a powerful move against the Argentinian system and its representatives.
He's tweeted out his own Goku memes. That's very strange.
Yes, and here, basically, I've been told that this is a Super Saiyan underneath.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what the Super Saiyan is, but
I love how we've all become old men, saying like, "Oh yeah, the toys." The boys are talking about there's a Super Saiyan one now.
Honestly, I don't know. Before you tell me, I want to say that I've watched two people trying to become Super Saiyan in front of me, and the only thing I got is that they really wanted to share their constipated expressions with someone.
Yeah.
It failed miserably.
Yeah, because it doesn't exist in real life. It's him going to a higher plane of superpowers, and all he does is scream until his hair turns long and blonde and he gets more muscular.
And it's like him having bananas on his head or something there.
Yes.
Anyway, so here is another meme where he's turning into a Super Saiyan or something. So as you said, it's reaching a next level of power.
I don't,
What?
maybe I'm really an old fuddy-duddy, but this sort of stuff is so imperceptible to me that there's a level of unseriousness there that I kind of resent. Like, I do enjoy some internet memes, but it feels like discourse is becoming contaminated with pop culture references to the point of where if the president of a country is just tweeting out random Goku memes, how unserious are we as a people?
It's the internet. Have fun. Like,
I know you'd say that.
No, but I remember the Trump posting with the anime stuff as well. You remember that advert that starts off with some Japanese girl with like a photo of Trump going, oh, and then it transitions to like vaporwave bullshit. And it's just like, this is great. I don't care.
The only funny one I do remember is when Boris on the 2019 campaign trail tweeted out like a 10-hour version of lo-fi beats to get Brexit done to.
Yeah, when he's on the train.
Appreciate, yeah.
To win an election, you do have to have good energy. And if people win elections without that, something's fishy.
So basically the message is, if you vote for Milei in 2023, you're becoming a Super Saiyan and you're getting the magical power to destroy the corrupt state that is keeping you down and keeping Argentina down. And anyway, says here, liberty is marching. Now, let's talk a bit about another issue, because I think that basically Milei is going to...
I hate the headline, by the way.
Yes, that's what I want to say, that he is going to be a person who will be attacked by both sides, by statists from both sides. And that's what I mean, because people who are statists have vested interests in every experiment that is anti-statist failing. So he is going to be criticized by everyone, and he isn't going to get... Everything he does is going to be portrayed in a very bad light by people from all over the world.
I just don't think far right is the right label category. Obviously, they're using it as a smear. Like the smear means nothing. But if we think about the original conceptions of left and right from at least the French Revolution, it's that the right were traditional and hierarchical, and he's not. He's openly revolutionary and ideological. And even though Austrian economic principles seem to work, great, cool, it doesn't mean that you're a metaphysically minded traditionalist. It just doesn't apply. You know, I know I'm being autistic about it, but it's just irritating to me.
But it's the smear that is being used.
Yeah, sure.
Because when you have someone who's a libertarian, I will stress in rhetoric, we will see what he's going to do.
Yes.
But when you have people who basically campaign on a libertarian platform and you call that far right, economically,
not even that.
No, yeah. They want to basically smear him. Another issue that was by the way, the BBC. It's your favorite.
Yeah, literal state-funded liars.
Yeah. So here, the Guardian again.
Literal state-funded liars because the BBC keeps subsidizing the Guardian.
Yeah. So they say far-right libertarian. It's like, carnivorous vegan. And I want to say here something which we may clash here a bit, but there are some people who are basically saying from the right wing here that are saying that basically
read this,
he is going to fail. And he says something. They say something like, Milei is a problem not because he's libertarian, but because every Latin American right winger still believes the U.S. is Reaganite, licks the U.S. boots, and disregards his own national interests and cultural heritage to favor an abstract and fruitless notion of liberty. And that he is 40 years behind.
Oh, I'm going to follow this account. Yeah, so not every Latin American right-winger does, actually. Bukele doesn't. Bukele in his rhetoric is very much about soldiers of God. He's a Christian. He's not very liberal. That's what's brought him into clashes of the US hegemony, because he's not been very liberal in the way that he's locked up the MS-13 members. And the US State Department have gone, well, you might be staring down the barrel of some sanctions there, lad, because we actually like Latin America being embroiled in all sorts of cartel conflict. And I think this is what he's been criticized for, in hooking up the Argentinian economy to the dollar rather than their national currency, which has been debased and inflated. I think that is short term, because the US petrodollar debt-based economy, even if Trump goes in, will go kaput eventually. So I think Bukele's sort of, I'm not even a big Bitcoin fan, but a kind of parallel asset-based currency is a much better way to go down.
Well, I want to say basically that for me, this tweet is nonsense. And for instance, they're talking about him disregarding his own national interests and cultural heritage. Well, the point, how? If you have for decades, consecutive decades, a statist economy and culture and institution that is basically destroying the economic prospects of Argentina, and it's actually contributing to the society, to the moral decline of society, then you really need to break that institution.
Sure, but hooking yourself up to the US or being a socialist country isn't a binary choice.
Well, no, I'm not saying it is, and
That's
I
what
don't know
they're criticizing.
exactly. I don't know. I'm talking about this person here.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Don't know about.
They're saying it's a criticism to then go from.
Excuse me,
from
sorry, because when they're talking about him being in favor of an abstract and fruitless notion of liberty, that's nonsense, and especially if we think of the economic indexes that and Argentina's place there. When you have, for instance, the position 144th out of 176 countries in economic index, then you're not about no, they are talking about it, because he is talking about it. When you're talking about an abstract notion of liberty that he's about, it's not abstract at all. He's talking about economic liberty.
Yeah, but this comes back to what I was saying before about I'll be interested to see what he does after he does economic reform. What's his national story? This is what they're saying. And of course they're going to say that because they're a Christian posting account, Stelios. So they're going to say that anything other than a Christian narrative is an abstract notion of liberty because he's only talking about materialism. So they're not being unfair in their critique there.
I don't have the impression he's anti-religion, by the way.
I'm not saying that he's anti-religion, but what's his messaging been is what their critique is.
His messaging is that consecutive economic mismanagement of Argentina has led into a situation of moral decline.
Yeah.
And it's called the viveza criolla, which is the kind of statist mentality of the principle of minimum effort that is basically leading Argentinians to think that there is that they shouldn't care about the common good because everything is corrupt. This has to be destroyed. One of the ways in which this can be destroyed is by improving the economic conditions of the country. When you have a population that is under 40% in poverty, that's significantly more difficult for the population to behave a bit more morally. So I don't see how what he's saying is abstract.
No, because they're saying that's
or fruitless.
That's insufficient. They're saying that clears out the corruption, that allows people breathing room to be prosperous and great. But from the purely material concern, the domain of morality, one doesn't necessarily follow the other. And so he needs an extra dimension, a sort of incorporative national story to then galvanize his population to be better, to raise birth rates, to believe in their country again, to compel them to fight and defend for it, not just become an economic zone. They're saying that he might basically make it into an economic zone. That's not a fair critique. That's not an unfair critique, sorry.
I honestly, I don't see this, and I don't think that Argentina is facing these troubles specifically. And the idea is for him, according to a non-statist mentality, is that you cannot solve the problem of moral decline with statism, because when you have statism, you are coercing people, and morality requires the element of choice.
Yeah, sure.
You're robbing them away from it.
Sure.
So, anyway, if you want to see more about the notion of freedom, you could visit a website and check out Symposium 42 to show some flesh and blood on the idea of freedom that we're doing here. With as little as £5 a month, you can subscribe to our website and check all our lovely premium content. See you there. Okay, so he said something here about abolishing several departments and several ministries. And we have from leading report here, it says Argentina's new Trump-like president Javier Milei keeps his promise and has announced that the Argentinian Ministry of Women, Gender and Equality will close in 21 days. Here we have Carl saying good morning from Argentina.
To be honest, just get rid of it. It's not needed. No one ever wanted this crap. Every Western country has one for some point.
It's like they say that everyone says it's impossible until someone does it.
Yeah.
It's also who was the president? Was it Ecuador? Who literally...
I don't know anything about South America.
Okay, so it was something that it was not on the radar of people, that you could clean the country from gang violence, and apparently he just did it.
I mean, the problem is, if you had sex realist positions for men and women's interests in regards to policymaking, and it wasn't infiltrated by some insane feminist ideologue, like if you had Louise Perry in there rather than bloody Jess Phillips, for example, or Stella Creasy or whatever, I mean, we'd all be relatively happy. It's just how susceptible are these institutions to ideological capture? And obviously, in Argentina specifically, it's just rotten from foundation to top.
Well, there's never been a successful gender ministry.
But yeah, no, gender's the wrong word for it. That's why.
No, either way. I mean, you can get your gender roles from reality because that's why men and women are different. This BS narrative and ideology has to be state funded.
But the reason those roles came about is because we weren't facing the same technological pressures now. I mean, so you would need someone who
it's not just technology, like
the birth control pill, surrogacy, things like. In order to craft national, international legislation about that, you do need someone who's clued into it.
You don't need to foster a culture in which men and women are equal to deal with technology.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah, you don't need to have a state-funded mechanism to deal with it. You can do it on a private basis.
I don't agree, but fair enough.
So let's move on and talk about the challenge basically that he's facing, because it's fun to look at chainsaws, look at the dancing moves, and look at the rhetoric that appeals to people's emotion. This is, you could say, necessary to win an election, but he is going to face a major difficulty now. Let us, before I say what this is, let me just say some data. So Peronists have governed for the 16 out of the last 20 years, but basically they're saying that they have set the stage for the last 45 years of Argentinian history. And perhaps you could say even more, because Juan Perón assumed power in 1946 and until 1951, and then there was a period of turmoil. He came back, then his wife was involved into politics. They have set the cultural agenda for it. So basically, what happens is Argentina is South America's second largest country. It is ravaged by hyperinflation. For several months now, inflation is more than 100%. I think right now it's close to 140%. So it's one of the, you could say, areas where you could definitely talk about the Austrian economics and the fear of the impact of high inflation. So this causes people to not save in local currency, and they want to buy dollars and US dollars. And this has, because the government has said that you're only allowed to purchase 200 US dollars a month, this has led into a huge black market of US dollars. This is one issue. Now, basically, their economy is stagnating and it loses its competitive edge. And they have massive spending on all sorts of welfare schemes, on price subsidies, energy subsidies. Just I saw here from The Economist that last year they had $12.5 billion, which is 2% of Argentinian GDP, just for electricity subsidies. So they're basically spending a lot. They have a fiscal deficit for the last 13 years. Out of the roughly 45 million people in Argentina, around 14 million people are working, and more than a third are working in the public sector. So it's basically, you have an economy that to a very large extent is based on the public sector. They're printing lots of money. And there are fears, as you mentioned before, of tying the Argentinian peso with the US dollar. But there's also the pragmatic worry that people have that there is no culture of fiscal responsibility in Argentina. And perhaps the worst thing is to carry on with the Argentinian central bank printing more money. Alternative sources of funding have to do with the IMF. Over a third of IMF's credit is Argentinian debt. And it's close to 80% of the GDP, which is close to $630 billion. So it's a lot.
They're also hooked up to the Chinese Belt and Road scheme. So they've got some of the largest lithium flats, the giant, they call it white gold flats in the world. And so they've just sold them off to the Chinese to make batteries. So that's very precarious.
And I've heard also that they have really rich copper reserves that they just do nothing with. And that Chile does. And they are, basically these reserves are in mountains that they share in the border. I think it's the Andes region. And Chile is doing something about it. Argentina is doing nothing about it until so far. So let us look at here the debt to GDP ratio.
Oh, so the wrong tab.
Yeah. It will be fixed. Yep. So basically, let's go down here. It says it's close to 80.3% of the country's GDP. I mean, There are worse.
I mean, yeah, we're worse. We've tipped 100% this year.
Greece is 166%, and it reached 200 and something percent some years ago, but that was also due to the shrinkage of the GDP during COVID. And let me just say also here we have all of these stuff. So basically, I won't say that the challenge that Milei is facing is that he has appealed to sentiment, which is necessary to win an election. But the issue is that he needs to carry on. He needs to move swiftly because the policies he is putting forward yield results in the mid to short to long term. So the question is, how long is the short term? If it's too long, people might lose the belief that he can solve the problem and may think that he is part of it. When you have 40% of Argentinians being in the below poverty levels, it is easy to think in a volatile manner. So the issue here is that he has won with a rhetoric that has mobilized people, but he's in a bit precarious a position because he can easily lose that crowd if that short term, before the good results of economic liberalization show, is a period that is extensive and people start looking at what he's doing as part of the problem rather than a solution to it.
Not just that, this is a mistake that Trump made. If you're going to try and bend the institutions to your will, or even scrap them or reform them or kick everyone out of their jobs, where do your enemies go? They don't just disappear. This is something that the left should have learned with cancel culture. If you cancel someone, they don't just vanish from the face of the earth. Exile doesn't work like it used to, where people wandered into the wilderness and died of exposure and starvation. These people will mobilize against him, be it subversively or violently. It's South America, after all. They have an incentive to ally with illegal gangs. He better have some really good protection, and he better have a plan with what to do with these people should they come for him.
Yes,
be prepared.
There's also the question of sabotaging by syndicalists and all people who are going to protest and they're going to strike and all these things. So he has a tough job, and I hope he improves Argentina. But one thing is that old habits die hard, and I've been told that there is this kind of mentality in Argentina. A lot of people are talking against it. They call it viveza criolla. I mentioned it just a bit before that. They say that it's a way of navigating the Argentinian culture, and it has to do with thinking that basically the system is so corrupt that the only way to get ahead is to just cheat the system, and that fosters a culture of disrespect for other people, for norms, for institutions, and also for the common good. And basically they're saying that essentially it's basically status mentality. It's the mentality and the culture you get after decades of statism.
Isn't that what you've seen before in former communist countries and in Eastern Europe, where corruption is just sort of the norm and it's actually baked into the system?
Yeah, well, you're entirely right. I mean, I would just be repeating what Celia said, but yes.
So the issue is that all habits die hard, and when we are dealing with decades of Peronism, which has led into a moral corruption in Argentina, according to what people say, this doesn't change overnight. It doesn't change over 2 years. It doesn't change over 4 years. It requires a sort of moral revolution that is lasting. And I think that basically there is this mentality of blaming others and not assuming responsibility has to change into a mentality of assuming responsibility. And if you want to check a bit more, check out the symposium number 45 on the problem of free will and moral responsibility. This is a rather unflattering image, I must say. Anyway.
I thought it made you look like a statesman, but never mind.
Yeah, so just remember, with £5 a month, you can gain access to all our premium content and watch our stuff. And also use code BIRTHDAY for 33% off. Please, can you guys help me? Because there's a camera in front of me. I don't say...
For the first 3 months.
Yeah, for the first 3 months. Okay. So I hope Milei succeeds into making Argentina a better place.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site. such as the Lads Hours. This one on Is 2024 Our Year? If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.